Hi, and welcome to Broker Tools, where we unpack the tools, systems, and strategies that help brokers optimize the way they work. I'm Katie, your host, and today we are catching up with Phillip from Financeable. Financeable is the loan origination platform built specifically for asset and commercial finance brokers, helping you to streamline applications and lender submissions. In this episode, we are going to explore how Financable's new AI-enabled features save time, reduce errors, and move deals through faster. So you can spend less time manually copying and pasting and more time growing your business. If you are in the asset or commercial finance broker industry looking to reduce the admin load, then this conversation is for you. Phillip, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Katie, thanks for having me. Excited to be on.
Me too. I'm really, and before we started, when I ultimately really looking forward to all these kinds of conversations with people like yourself, because as we have said, tech in finance is quite fragmented. There's all these kinds of technology available to brokers to optimize the way they work. Let's start with some origin stories about you and how did you, before even Financeable began, where did you start? How did you get here?
Yeah, that is a bit of a long story. I actually fell into tech. So long time ago, I was back at uni. I was actually studying medicine, and I was on the path to being a doctor. Realized that wasn't for me, and started a small business early on in the early days of the internet when building a website cost a lot of money. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars just to get a basic website up. So this is the early 2000s. And as arrogant or maybe naive as I was at the time, being young, I thought, you know what, I could build it myself. Shouldn't be too hard. And so after 6 months of, messing around, I finally cobbled together a really crappy website. And it worked well enough that the business did pretty well from it. But the side effect that I didn't anticipate at the time was people started coming up to me and saying, hey, can you build me a website? And then that became a business in itself and was more lucrative than the one that I had started, that I built the website for originally. So then I quit that and then started, building websites for people. And then that evolved into me learning how to code properly, and then eventually became a software engineer and, worked in the industry for about 15 years now.
Wow. So software engineering, which I guess is how we all, I think all the people on this side of the industry, I call it the school of drop and roll. Do you know what I mean? Like you accidentally get dropped in it and then you learn as you roll along. Because I have a very similar, I guess, origin story too, because I didn't start in software either. And so it's that whole learning curve that you don't actually expect. How did it then transition over into you creating Financeable?
That's a funny story. So I was working in tech, and I was working for a company doing a lot of automation. And my brother at the time was working in finance, and he'd always come home. Well, not come home, sorry. He, whenever he'd hang out, he'd talk about the frustrations that he would have with the finance industry because it was so lagging behind in terms of their use of technology. Mm-hmm. And, he'd always be complaining, there must be a better way to do X, Y, Z. And as he would explain it to me, I'd be like, yeah, that's really easy. You can just do this. Yeah. And one Friday night over a bottle of whiskey, we kind of hashed out this idea is, well, if we could do this, why can't we do it? And so, that classic story of back of the napkin, woke up the next morning and looked around my living room. I'm like, what's all this crap? And then saw an email from ASIC saying that we had registered a company. So being drunk, we had gone from the concept to design to all the way to registering a company, all in one night. And then so I guess I said to him, well, we've registered the company. I guess we've got to do it now. And so that's how it started. But originally, the Financeable, we didn't set out to be a purely software company, even though tech was the background for it. Really what we were trying to solve was the experience that a consumer has to go through to access finance. which was pretty poor at the time. Forms were really cumbersome and really long. The process was slow. Once you submitted an application, you'd wait days for somebody to contact you. And then that process would be, really old fashioned, where you go through an interview process and kind of rehash a lot of the stuff you'd already put into an application. So, by the time you'd gone to the end of the process, people were pretty tired of it. So that's the process we tried to solve with technology. And funnily enough, we were a broker at the start. And in broking, we discovered that it wasn't just the consumer side of the process that was really difficult. It was also for the broker. There didn't really exist tools for the broker to make it easy for them to, write loans, originate loans, and then lodge them. So we looked around, we couldn't find anything that really worked for us. And again, me being arrogant or naive, I thought, why don't we just build our own? So that's what we did. And that's eventually what became Financeable. So, in using it, we talked to other people, other brokers, other friends, and they said, hey, we really like your software. Can we use it as well? So very similar story to how I started in tech with the website business I had. So we started giving it to people at the start just for free, and then we started charging, and we're like, hey, this might be quite lucrative. And it was a difficult decision for us to make because we were actually doing quite well on the broking side. But with any sort of service-based industry, it's difficult to scale. It only really scales up with the number of revenue-generating resources you have in the business.
Yeah.
And also, broking's pretty difficult. It may seem pretty easy to people on the outside, but it's actually quite tough. And we sort of thought, maybe we're not so cut out for broking. Why don't we just focus on the tech side? So we pivoted from being a broker to being a software company. And yeah, that's how Financeable today was born.
And you've never looked back?
We've looked back a lot of times.
Which I guess the healthy, honest truth. You're like, oh man, tech.
Look, tech is really difficult. Being a tech startup's really hard. You have to invest a lot in the beginning to even get to a point where you're making money. So, on broking, we were making money from the start. As soon as you get leads coming in, you've got customers to serve, you're making commission straight away. Whereas tech, it takes time to build your software to a point where it's actually sellable to people. And especially with a SaaS-based business, you need a lot of customers to actually generate enough revenue. So yeah, those first few years were really tough. That classic story, I was working out of my mum's garage, doing really long hours and not a lot of money at the start, actually no money at the start. We were bootstrapping the business.
Yes.
So it was a bit of a hard slog. And there were definitely moments where we looked back and thought, maybe broking was just easier. We were actually making money, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But looking back now, we're glad that we made that choice. And I'm very happy at where we're at now.
Which is, I guess, that whole entrepreneurial growth journey. Because whether you are a broker or a SaaS software, like in the beginning, your yards are harder. Even just as a broker in the beginning, that whole cycle is tough. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, starting any business is tough, right? From scratch. So, going through that process, I think it was great for us because we didn't, and this is something that we kind of see with other technologies for brokers. It's made by software engineers, it's made by tech people, and sometimes they lack some of the depth of experience or understanding of brokers. So having had that experience being a broker beforehand really helped us shape our technology, so that it is made by brokers for brokers. So we're not trying to dictate how a broker should run their business or how they should do their job. It helped informed how we built our technology. So, it enabled brokers rather than dictated to them.
Yeah, and I see the beautiful line. I too obviously have a marketing background and have done a website design service as well as you. And what I have found in the process is those two combinations of not only have you done website design along with broking, you're now on the other side of technology. And obviously, one of the things you notice within those three processes is the journey that someone goes through.
Absolutely. And that's the part that you need to sort of keep in the back of your mind as you're doing this, right?
Yeah. And so whether you're building out a software or your broker business, it's what is the journey that you're taking people on. When it came to Financeable, because you're actually really only focused on asset and commercial, you really don't do mortgage. How did you choose that particular frame of reference?
That was really easy. Two reasons. The first one, that's where our area of expertise is. So my co-founder, Darren, he's from the asset finance background. He built Pepper's asset finance business from the ground up. So he had a lot of experience in asset finance. So it was natural for us to start there. The second reason is what we were doing is very similar to something that already exists in the residential mortgage area, which is next gen and apply online. So that's something that's existed for a long time. They've got a good hold of the market, and so we didn't want to compete with a giant like them. So we thought, let's focus on asset finance. It's what we know best, and it's a very underserved market.
Yes. And so for those who actually don't know what Financeable actually is or does, what is Financeable?
Yeah, so Financeable, it's a broker platform that allows brokers to aggregate data from different sources for a finance application. So it might be a CRM, it might be a government database such as the Australian Business Registry. It could be from a credit bureau like Illion or Equifax. And it pulls all that data in to essentially build your finance application and then allow you to select a lender that you want to lodge that deal with, and then lodge the deal directly to them automatically.
Nice. And so I guess ultimately, it's what we call your pre-submission process, like gathering everything that's suitable for a submission application process and making sure that that data is true and correct, so that when you're trying to put through your asset or commercial application to the lender, that whole process is automated and easy.
Yeah, exactly right. So essentially, we're sort of the gateway between the broker and the lender. So we centralize that process. But even if you've gathered all your information in one place, when you bring it into Financeable, every lender has different requirements. They have different criteria, policy. So what we do is we analyze the data of your application and then let you know, hey, you're missing this bits of information if you want to lodge it with this lender, or the lender that you were originally thinking of, your application doesn't quite fit their criteria. So you might want to look at some of the others. So we sort of help that process along by giving you the information up front. So then you're not wasting time going to the lender and realizing, oh, it's not going to work with them.
Oh, nice. So because as we talk about journeys, everybody obviously, I say everybody, but we're working towards most brokers having a CRM in place. You'd hope that you do. If you don't have a CRM in place, please come talk to me. Only because we obviously want to understand your lead flow, and lead flow helps make this process easy. And so once you've gathered all the fact finds and all the details about your client, and where does Financeable fit next? So in the journey, you have a discovery call, then all of those types of details go into a CRM. Where is Financeable?
Yeah, so we would probably come in next. So between you doing the fact find, talking to your customer, collecting all the information from them, then that's where we come in. So you've got enough information to kind of put together a deal. You would then bring that deal into Financeable. You would finish off whatever's missing. So as I mentioned before, each lender has different requirements. So we'll let you know what bits of information you still need. You can finish that off within Financeable. We can talk back to your CRM. So we'll send any data that you collect there back to your CRM, so you can still have that information for the future. And then you go through the selection process. So you have a look at the lenders that match your customer's profile, choose the one that you want to go with, and then lodge your deal with them.
Nice. And with Financeable, how do you make the data safe and secure throughout this process?
Yeah, so where security is one of our biggest things. So we start at the foundation of how we build everything, how we design everything, is always security focused. We're actually ISO 27001 certified.
Nice.
Funnily enough, we're about to go through our recertification for the year tomorrow.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. And it's something that we've always been conscious of. With brokers, you're handling a lot of people's really personal information and some very sensitive data. Things like driver's licenses, passports, their financial statements. Some of the most personal information to a customer, and so you really need to handle that with a lot of care. As soon as if somehow that data is leaked, you lose the trust of your customers, and that's the most important thing for a broker. They're coming to you with a really important purchase. Outside of a home, a vehicle will be your second most important or expensive purchase that you make. So having that trust in the person that you're working with is hugely important. And so for us, we always have that in the back of our mind. That security is number one. So everything is encrypted. All the data is housed in Australia. We have processes in place as part of our ISO obligations to continually check and assess and audit everything that we do, so we ensure that we're compliant and we're safe and secure.
Nice. And then because you've got all that safety in place, you've now got integration. So you integrate with, you said Illion, Australian bank, like the business registry.
That's right.
Anybody else?
Yeah, there's Equifax.
Yeah.
There's also ID Kit, so they're a identity verification service. They do biometric verification. Again, another area that we're trying to push in terms of security, but this is on the other side. So this is on the fraud side. So we offer this service so brokers can verify the identity of the customers that they're working with to ensure that they're not bad actors, they're not fraudulent. And there's actually been a few cases recently where that's actually happened, and using the services saved them.
Yeah, which is paramount by having those I say it's a well-known fact that generally within the AI world, guardrails don't work. But because, and I'm assuming this, but you should correct me if I'm wrong, but because you've got certain types of systems and iOS securities in place, AI and other, even API access to areas is really finite and secured.
Absolutely. And it's especially when you're integrating with companies such as, credit bureaus such as Illion and Equifax. They're very, very security conscious. They're dealing with very personal information as well. In fact, to the point where, they audit us before we're able to integrate with them. So you've got to adhere to a very high standard when you're working with API integrations.
Yes. And so would you say that Financeable handles some of that fact find or document collection for parts that may be not collected at the beginning of a CRM process?
Yeah, exactly right. So you could, in theory, and some people do this, you could build your whole application within Financeable. That's possible. But really what we do is we sort of help finish the process because, you might gather, say, 80 to 90% of the information, but then you may not be aware of some other details that you need to be able to submit that application to a specific lender. Every lender has different requirements. They all have their idiosyncrasies, and it's difficult to kind of remember all of those in the back of your head. So that's why we've got that within Financeable to kind of help you finish your process and ensure that you're all there and correct, and then you can lodge the deal.
Nice. And I guess what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've seen in the integration process and moving from one place to another and using Financeable in that process?
In terms of somebody integrating with us or us integrating with someone else?
Either or, because I think there's two processes. There's first you want to integrate, but then someone also might later on want to integrate with you because, again, data in, data out. People have both those needs.
Yeah, it's so integrating with any API is a pretty challenging process in itself. Every API is different. Every API is built differently. There's different types of APIs that exist as well. So not all APIs are the same. So trying to navigate that is pretty tricky. The biggest challenge in itself is being able to map data. So, when you've got a finance application, you could have upwards of 100 fields that you need to fill in. But then you've got to match that data to someone else's API. So then you've got to take those 100 fields and then map them to the other side. So once you connect the dots, then you've got to do things like data transformation. So you might have it as a number in your side, they might have it as a string. For those who don't know what a string is, it's just text.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to translate the type of data as well. So it's a bit of a slow process, a lot of trial and error to get through. But yeah, so integrating with any API is a challenge in itself, especially with how many different kinds that exist out there in the market.
Yeah. And ultimately, if we were to smooth out this process, what would happen is somebody obviously would do their initial fact find of the client. Then they would come into Financeable and do is it lender research?
Yeah. So we've got a lender panel where we show all the quotes, the criteria, the policy of the lender, and then you can kind of select which one you want and then go from there.
And then by selecting the ones you might think as the most suitable for your client, it will then say, hey, you've got all this data, but you might be missing this, this, and this. Go collect it.
That's right. Exactly.
And then once they've got it back in, obviously you have a system to audit and make sure that IDs are all correct and true. And then boom, you head it over to the lender.
That's it. You got it.
Just making sure we've got all the ducks in a row and making that workflow smooth and easy, because obviously everybody has their own broker process, but generally at the end of the day, submission is the same.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, well, it is the same, but it's also very different. Every lender has their own process for submission. So, even us talking about it, simplifying the process, it's still a little tricky. You still have to think it through. So you can imagine how much more complicated it is when you do it actually, because every lender has their own process. So you've got to try and remember all the different ways these lenders operate. And so that's often the frustration with a lot of brokers is, having to do things so many different ways. So you'll find that brokers will have comfort. They'll have a few lenders that they'll work with because they're comfortable, they're happy with how those lenders work. And then they might forego other lenders that might be too difficult to work with, even if their product is superior.
Because the process is clunky.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now, obviously, AI being a big part of any integration or any software product or service, how is Financeable using AI?
Yeah, so we're using AI in two ways. The first one, and the one we adopted right away, was using AI tools to help our day-to-day. So our developers all use AI assistants in their coding, which they anecdotally they say has improved their efficiency by like 2 to 3x, which is quite significant. And that's great for us because we're still a startup. We're still operating with funding, so we're not sustainable yet. It means that we don't have to hire as many developers to work in the business. So we're saving money and still being really efficient in our output. So that's the key way we're using AI in the business. On the flip side of that, we're also incorporating AI into the product, and the key feature that we're using AI for is the lodgement. So as we spoke before, there's APIs. So for those who don't know what an API is, it's an application programming interface. It's a really fancy term for basically a computer program to talk to another computer program and exchange data. So a perfect example would be what's happening today. So, with this interview, you set it up by sending me a calendar invite. In that calendar invite was some links to this video call, right? So like a Zoom, like a Teams. So those two programs, so the Teams or the Google Meet and the calendar invite, the calendar program, they're different programs, but the way they speak to each other to know that there was an invite and then here's the call is via an API. And that's putting it simply. So there's lenders out there that have APIs you can integrate with, but there's only a handful of them. And then there's a lot of lenders that actually don't have APIs, but they might still have a broker portal where the broker would go and input the data and submit the deal. What we've done is we've taken AI and built an automation that allows the broker to automatically take the data from their application within Financeable and populate it in the lender's portal. So, to put it really simply, it's like automated copy and paste. So it does all the work for you. And the reason we've done that is because these lenders aren't going to build their own APIs. So having that automated submission, isn't going to be possible with them. So we decided we're going to build it on their behalf. And that's, and AI has helped us enable that. Doing that before would have basically been near impossible.
So I did a recent video on the difference between an AI automation and an AI chat and generative AI, just to kind of break down the differences, because a lot of software people are saying, we do AI, and I'm like, are you really? Anyway. But what I like, and I did mention actually you as a team in it, is that this is closer to what we would call AI agents acting on your behalf.
Yeah, it's agentic AI.
Agentic AI. And the key difference between an AI automation and agentic AI is that your robot is doing intelligent stuff. Is what I call it, because an automation does not do intelligence. It does straight up copy and paste. But by having agentic AI, it's almost like, trying to learn two languages. You've said over here, these are the things I need to submit, but the lender portal over here is in French. And this is English. And so your agent is going, okay, English, these things need to go over to this lender portal that's in French, and it's doing the interpretation and copying and pasting the right fields in the right places to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's what the AI helps enable, the ability to translate the data that you have on Financeable. So like I said, an application could have upwards of 100 fields. So if we were going to go and do that manually with every lender that existed, we'd never get to the end of it. We'd constantly be having to map. So this allows us to do that without having to manually map all of those fields ourselves. The other thing that it does is it also helps you navigate any issues with your data. So let's say you made a mistake with the type of data that you inputted. So let's say you put the date of birth backwards, like if you use the American format. When it goes into the lender portal, it'll understand the format that it should be in, and then actually apply the correct format of the data. So there's lots of these little I suppose helpers that AI that come along with that actually smooth out the process even more. So it's more than just the copy and paste, translating the data from English to French. It's also correcting all of your typos or spelling mistakes as well.
And just for clarity of purpose, it's not English to French. We're just using that as an analogy of interpretation of data, just in case you catch it in the middle here.
Yeah, we're not applying for finance in Paris.
No. So ultimately, AI or even APIs, it's like two languages or two positionings, and we're just trying to interpret one data to the next data and make sure that the information syncs and is correct. And then obviously from here, this is where the human in the loop matters, because you would check everything that the AI agent put in to make sure it's all correct.
Yeah, that's right. So this isn't an automation that happens, behind closed doors. It's not a black box where you hit the button and it disappears and you kind of just sit there and cross your fingers and hope that works out. No, this is a helper agent. So it's supposed to support you in the process. So you still have to log on to the lender portal, start the automation, and then it'll go through, start populating the data on its own. And there might be points where it'll stop and ask you to intervene. So let's say a good example of this, and we've done this by design because the broker still needs to be involved in the process for various reasons. A good one is if there's a declaration that they have to make to say that they've done the right thing by the customer, all the information they've inputted is accurate and is true. The agent can't do that on behalf of the broker. The broker actually has to action that themselves. They have to be the one that directly, says yes to that declaration.
Yeah.
And that's important because, we don't want people, for compliance purposes coming back and saying, hey, I didn't say yes to this, the agent did, so I'm not liable for anything that's happened. So in that way, the broker is still responsible for what they have to do. So there might be moments where there's broker in the loop. The other times it might want the broker to intervene or the user to intervene is when something goes wrong. So the AI isn't perfect, and it can get things wrong sometimes. So it'll ask you to resolve whatever issue is happening, and then you can continue. So in this way, it's actually superior to an API. If something goes wrong with the API, then that's it. So it's a binary sort of proposition where it either works or it doesn't. So it's 100% or 0. With this, you can go as far as you want it to go. So if something goes wrong, you can fix it and continue on. So the likelihood of success is much higher than just a traditional API.
Nice. And I guess this kind of brings into the future of what AI and tech might happen. Where do you see the biggest gains?
I think it's exactly what we're talking about, and also what I mentioned before and how we're using AI within the business. So, I think there's a lot of talk, not just in our industry, but, generally about, whether AI is going to replace people or take over jobs. And I don't agree with that. AI is a tool and it's really good at certain tasks. So what it'll do is it'll replace tasks, but it can't replace everything that a person does. So looking at the future, AI is going to be something that enables people in their jobs that they're doing, make things easier, do things quicker. It's going to empower them rather than actually replace what they're doing. And, as we were talking just before about the automation, we still, the person, the human is still a vital part of that process. It's not going to replace them. The AI is never going to be perfect. And so, in talking to brokers who have started using our automation, they'd have dedicated people whose sole job was to take the data from their CRM or their broker platform and then input it into the lender's portal. Now that with this in place, your fear would be, well, those people are going to lose their jobs. Well, actually, what these brokers have done is they're now training up those admin people to become brokers so that they can generate revenue for their business. So they've gone from costing money to now making money because of this automation. So you can see that it's actually making things better for people as opposed to, ruining people's lives.
Yeah, and I guess this is the key thing, is that if you can move much more faster and efficiently and smoother, and you get all those systems and those processes all organized in a way, it just creates capacity to do more.
That's exactly right. And that's what's happening, with some of these brokerages. They're already paying for these people in their business, but now these people get to make money for the business as opposed to just purely costing money. And it's because they've got these tools now that make the process more easier, much more efficient, and it unlocks these resources to be able to do other things.
Nice. Are you happy to take us through a little tour of Financeable?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. So here we are. This is Financeable. This is our sort of like landing page. So I'm going to take you through a quick tour of how we put together an application. So there's two things that might happen in using Financeable. If you've got a CRM or somewhere else where you gather the information for a deal, you would integrate with us via API, and then you'd send that data in, create an application in Financeable, and all your data's populated. So, you might come in and it's pre-filled and it looks something like this. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, you can actually build an entire deal within Financeable. So you have that ability. And we've done that because, like we said, we don't know which parts of the application you haven't finished off when you get here. So we give you the ability to finish off any parts of it once you've arrived. Okay. So there's two parts to the financial form. Obviously, the application form that you see in front of you with the data fields. And then on the right is our lender panel. So that's where we're showing the lender quotes, the criteria, the policy, and all the pricing. So let's get started. I'm not going to go too deep into this. I'm going to show you a couple of things in terms of how we make it easier for brokers. So we're adding the asset details right now. We're integrated with a couple of APIs here. So the first one is Blue Flag. It's a database with vehicle information. So we can go and get the details of the vehicle, pre-populate that into the application. So rather than having to manually enter in everything, it's all done for you there. So these are some of the little features that we have to help brokers be really efficient within the platform. As I mentioned before, we're also integrated with some government databases like the Australian Business Registry, so we can go and get business information. This is really important for commercial deals because you want to know time in business and GST. These are two of the biggest criteria in commercial asset finance.
Okay.
As you can see, we're integrated with ASIC, with Equifax, and then you can get more information around the commercial entity that you're doing a deal with. You click the button, we pull the data, populate it in the application. As you can see here, we've populated more information. We've got the ASIC file. We've pre-populated any of the beneficial owners of this particular entity. So as you can see here, we've got additional entities that are beneficial owners, and then any of the interested parties. So we've got a couple of directors here in Darren and myself. So as you can see, it's pretty quick and easy to put together an application. So once you've kind of gone through and done that, on the right here, you can come in, have a look at the different lenders that you might be interested in sending this deal through. So you can go and you can check the criteria, and you can see here we've met most of the criteria. We're missing out on one. You can also check the fields that are required by this particular lender and that are missing. So you can go and finish those off and then send the application over. And then we provide things like, the different rates, like your effective rate, comparison rate, the loan amount, any brokerage fees that are related to that particular lender's product. And then once you're done, you go and submit the application.
And so once ultimately you've gathered all the data, you've chosen your lenders, and then the upload of application. We have a demo, but we'll probably not play it right now, but maybe a little later, of how even the AI agents do that actual process and lodgement. But you were just pointing to Lodge AI over in the side there.
Yes.
How does that help brokers?
So Lodge AI is that agent that takes your data and then lodges the deal for you. So it populates the information in the broker platform. So that little badge tells you that this lender has been set up with that agent.
Nice. And that makes that whole process from where an AI, and once Lodge AI is clicked, it then starts that whole process of opening up this particular lender's login panel and then go through that lodgement process with them.
Exactly right.
Nice. Hey, it's Katie and Phil back here. We realized that we did not go through the Agentic process. So we thought we would do a demo and talk through how the Lodge AI actually works. Phil, thank you for coming back and doing this with me.
That's okay. My pleasure. Anytime. Always happy to, always happy to chat to you.
Thanks. So people understand what is happening with Lodge AI as an agentic process. Do you want to bring it up and let's walk through it?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So why don't I jump into it and we can talk through it as we're going, okay?
Yeah.
So
one of the things I guess we've noticed here is that instead of it being Lodge AI, because this is an older video demo that we're doing, it's Broker Loop in this one.
Yeah, so this was during our beta stage. So this was an internal project name for it. So it's not called Broker Loop. That was just what we called it in our team. It's actually still called Lodge AI, and the badge looks a little better than this one.
Yeah. So if you're confused, just know that if you still click Lodge AI, this is kind of the process that the agent goes through.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so to kick off the process, you click the upload button, and that'll open up a little screen, a little dialogue that asks you to select any documents that you want to include. And then there's just a little disclaimer to make sure that you've downloaded the appropriate application to be able to start the process. And then we're in. So right now, the agent is navigating to the lender's portal, the lender's web application, opening it up, and is about to start the login process. There we go.
I can cut that out at least.
Shows how good I am.
Okay, and so right now it's doing the agent login. This is all agentic right now. Like nobody's touching a thing.
So actually, it's partly agentic, but the login process is still manual. So we still ask the broker to log in themselves. And there's a couple of reasons. One, for security's sake, we don't want to be responsible for someone's credentials. So they still hold their own credentials and log in. And the other side of it is it gives lenders a bit of peace of mind that we're not, doing this without the brokers, actioning it.
Okay.
But
and
now
so
this
when
is all
the initial login was, it kind of opens the window and the broker actually logs in themselves. But then right now, where are we up to? Is this agentic or is this?
This is all agentic. So the only thing the broker had to do was input their username and password, hit continue, and then that was it. So this has all been agentic.
So everything after login has been agentic, and the agent has been able to take over.
That's right. So the agent navigated to the portal, went to the login page, then the broker inputted their login details, hit continue, and then it's been agent ever since. So what you're seeing right now on your screen, it's flying through all the input fields and all the little different modals and screens. It's the agent.
It's the agent. Okay.
Yeah.
And
you
so
can kind of
this
see it that it's
paste right now, it's the agent.
That's right.
So we're like what we're doing right now, where we're sitting and watching, that's all like, I mean, sure, as a broker, you're busy. You could be actually doing phone calls and following up on email.